Right. We have another video installment today. This is actually a video talking about what's the difference between a Super 8 Deluxe and a Custom 8, and a 22nd series and a 23rd series. And to your left, we have a 22nd series 49, model 2252, Custom 8 sedan. And to the right, we have a 49 also, but it's the 23rd series, and it's a Super 8 Deluxe. And if you notice that they do look an awful lot like a Custom 8, you would be correct, because they're virtually, from the outside, they're almost completely identical in trim. They also had a Super 8, just a Super 8, which did not have the extra grills on the front and rear. And we're just taking a look from the back. But I'm going to try to keep the video short. But walk up here and then I'll show you the front. And this applies kind of for just about every Packard between 48 to 50. What are the differences between a 22nd and 23rd series? But back up here a little bit. If you observe to the right, we now have our Custom 8 here. It's a 22nd series, and if you notice that the little moldings that go above and below the parking light, they actually wrap around, all the way around to the wheel, to the wheel opening, I should say. And even the standard 8s and the Super 8s, that still have the short wheelbase, are very similar. They actually wrap all the way around. In the 23rd series, the Super 8s and Super 8 Deluxes, only the bottom molding wraps to the wheel, and the upper one stops just beyond the end of the parking light. And these moldings are 23rd series only. Custom 8 or Super 8, Super 8 Deluxe, or Custom 8. All three of them use the same molding. It's just they actually have sprues that are drilled and tapped for these extra grill bars. They're already there. And they're incredibly difficult. It took me 6 years to find a pair of those that were decent and loose from a car. And I lucked out that they kind of matched up pretty good with what I had. Heck, but anyway, and then of course the bumper, starting at the very end of the 22nd series 49s, the front bumper, they went to a solid one-piece stamping, which was much cheaper to make versus the about 8, or well, in this case about 18-piece bumper, really, when you add in the teeth and everything. But it's actually one, two, there's a piece here, there's a piece like this underneath, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you got this piece, which is tack welded in, which makes it 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 with the bumper guards, I guess. So it was very intricate, and actually all of the trim on both of these cars, when they put these together, was done by hand. They were assembled by hand and actually fitted to each car, so they're not exact. You can't just pull a grill out and just bolt it into another car. You actually have to get out a body hammer and actually massage the panels to line up, especially around in this area here. But anyway, some other things that are different. The Custom 8s, of course, have the shadow cloth interior, like this one does. Of course, it's got the extra wood graining on the dash. On the front to rear, the headliner bows go actually front to back. They do not go side to side. And this is also the same for the 42 to 47 Custom Super Clipper. That's where it started at. And essentially, basically, that's what this really is. It's been kind of heavily covered over. The Super 8s, on the other hand, in the 23rd series that have this long wheelbase, have the same same headliner as all the rest of the junior Packards. And they have a kind of a striped pattern. Similar to that is actually of a convertible, but without the leather. And the door panels on these have the same correlating fabric in the insert with a nice chrome surround. And also to note that same chrome molding is actually the same as on a standard 8, but not on a deluxe. Every model had its own door panel, but this is the Super 8. And of course, you can see the dash looks pretty much like every one of the standard 8 or Super 8 dashboards. Except for the limousines, they actually had the custom 8 extra pieces that went on the glove compartment door. And the next thing that's really odd, and it's something that very few Packard people know, you'll notice these gauges are silver-faced. Keep that in your mind for a moment while I walk back over to the other car. Those silver faces are unique to the Super 8, and that would apply to 22nd Series cars and 23rd Series 49 only cars. That's good. But if you had a custom 8 or a standard 8 or a standard 8 Deluxe, you had gold faces like these. And in 1950, they changed the color on all models. It went to a very dark, almost charcoal, almost black. And that's because these gauges were actually kind of hard to read. Even with the silver faces, they were kind of hard to read. But that instrument cluster in a Super 8 is actually unique only to a Super 8. Do they have silver faces? I thought that would be something that's kind of interesting. And the upper moldings for your 22nd Series cars have this double, kind of this two-stripe pattern. And the junior cars did not have these moldings, but the Super 8s with the short wheelbase did, and of course the customs did. And that's what should be there. The 23rd Series, they changed the pattern. And they went to that. And that molding normally would wrap around the car. And it stops on all but the custom 8s, no matter what. It stops there on a 23rd Series. 22nd Series, you're going back, and the standards and the standard 8s, they stop here. The Deluxes and the Super 8s stop about here. And of course the custom 8 is the only one with the molding that wraps all the way around, no matter what, 22nd or 23rd Series. And you see there's no molding, there was never a molding here. It just ended right here. This is a Super 8 Deluxe. The biggest difference though, what they did is they took the short wheelbase Super 8 and moved it up to the custom 8's body, and this was to make use of the expensive tooling that went into building the longer chassis with the longer front end to accommodate the biggest difference, and that is, and I'm going to put the camera down, the engines are basically completely different. Oh, and that view of the wheel medallion, you'll notice that only on a custom 8s were the only ones that had the glass enamel cloisonné wheel medallions. The standard 8s and the Super 8s all had this. Give me a moment while you're watching that wheel. Pop the hood. Now the biggest difference. This is basically this is the 327 5-main bearing block. 22nd and 23rd Series cars basically are identical when you open up the hoods for the most part. There's a few things that are different. I don't really have too much time to go into it on this video. It would be too long and too boring. I could talk for hours and hours about what the different little nuances are. But you can see, you know, pretty much your basic Packard engine compartment. But when the long wheelbase cars, they moved the Super 8 up to the custom 8's 127-inch wheelbase to make use of the tooling. That's where the similarities end, because of course the engine block is smaller, and if you notice the radiator sits behind the core support, and this nose shroud actually comes through to meet up with the radiator. You see it sits pretty far back. All that sits back. That's because that's a smaller block than a 356. And you'll notice, I'll come up here, you'll notice that the radiator sits out in the core support. It sits further forward, and that's because the 356 engine block is taller, it's longer at the bottom, and it has a bigger rear crankcase bell housing on the back. And that the reason they made the 127-inch wheelbase with the clipper was to accommodate putting this engine in that car. This engine, the 356 engine, will physically not fit down in a standard 8 with a 120-inch wheelbase. And believe it or not, this car, the frames, there's 18 holes that would have to be drilled in the frame of this car and brackets transplanted to adapt all of the changes that went from this that they engineered to take and make this car from this, just to get all of the engine and everything set in there correctly. So that's kind of the biggest difference. And something to note for those that don't know, if you're not sure if it's if you have an engine that's sitting kind of in the wild and you're not sure if it's a 356 or not, or if it's in a car, Custom 8s have a cast iron water neck. The hose angles off and goes onto the right side of the radiator, right to the passenger side of the center line of the radiator. Standard 8s and Super 8s have a stamped metal housing, and the radiator hose enters to the left of center line on the radiator. And 356s are pretty unique animals anyway, but 356 has a 4-bolt exhaust flange. 288, 327, 327 9 main, and 359 have a 2-bolt exhaust flange. It's another little difference that most people, that's kind of an easy way to tell them apart. But one way that I found is that the cylinder head is lower than the throttle linkage connector here on the firewall. It sits lower on the small engine. The big senior car, it's actually a little higher. This engine's about 3.5 inches taller than a 288 or a 327, as well as being longer. But thought I'd point those little details out. But other than that, you know, of course, your suspension, the Custom 8 has its own. Of course, I just mentioned the engine was unique to the Custom 8. The engine, the transmission, the drive shaft, rear end, and all the suspension, all the brakes are unique to a Custom 8. They are not the same as the suspension pieces bolted onto the frame here. These cars basically, suspension-wise, it's the same suspension, just heavier rated springs, but it's the same as a standard 8, as a junior. So mechanically, this is a junior car underneath a senior body. That's the best way to describe it. But they're both excellent cars, and I thought I'd just put this video out there. And I know I probably missed a bazillion things. Like I said, I try to keep my videos under 15 minutes just so it doesn't get dragging on, because I could probably give a class on these cars. I've owned 10 Packards over the years, and all of them were this era, the 22nd or 23rd series cars. And I've actually had a standard, a deluxe, a super, and a custom. So I've kind of had one of each. I even had one with an Ultramatic drive, one with no overdrive, one with an R9 overdrive, and R11 overdrive. And I'll note this Custom 8 was nearly the last 22nd series Custom 8 probably built. It's a very late date on it. This car has I think the date of manufacture on this car was early May 49. This car was built later than that. I can't remember the date, and unfortunately I don't have the original engine in this car. The engine was replaced at one point. But anyway, that's just kind of to tell you that somewhere in the 22nd series 49 cars, they went from R9 overdrive to R11, because I had nearly the very first 22nd series 49 Custom 8 that was built. It had an R9, but this one actually has, and it's going to be kind of hard to see, you can see the relay down there. That's an R11 relay, and of course in the 23rd series all of them were R11, so they have the same overdrive unit. It's a little bit physically bigger on the Custom 8s because it is a heavier version of it. They have bigger planetary gears. Even the transmissions are completely different. They're not interchangeable between the standards and supers and the customs. Like I said, the Custom 8s are really their own, really a unique car, and in another own, almost there should be another brand of car. But what brand would it be? Only a Packard. They probably could have gotten away with splitting it up as Clipper and Packard, but they decided to do that later on. Not sure what good that had to do with saving the company. Probably not much, but anyway, with that, I'm starting to run out of video time. I'm going to just try to walk around, see if there's... Oh, yeah. And of course, the 22nd series cars, the standards and supers had just one strip down just the bottom. Customs, of course, had two, and it was mounted down low. 23rd series, and unfortunately, it's missing off this car. I have the moldings. I have everything that's not that you don't see on the car. They were mounted down the center. But trying to think if there's anything else. Disregard the rear bumper guards. Those were an accessory item, and those are a Packard accessory. They have Packard part numbers on them. And I actually have, the front one was bent up pretty bad, so I still have the bent up pieces of it. But the rear bumper, this rear bumper is actually from a different car. And it's just one that I had laying around, and the bumper that was there was sort of beat up and not really very good. So that one looked better, and it just stuck it on there. But, oh, here's something I bet you didn't know. 23rd series. This is the this was actually a new old stock piece, and I put it on. But that's the gas tank door guard on a 23rd series. 22nd series cars look like that. So you can see it from one, then over to the other. It's got that little extra tail, and it wraps up the side more. But anyway, just thought I'd put that video out. Oh, and of course everybody knows that the senior cars had these extra moldings. It's the same housing as the standard 8, except they drilled 2 holes to bolt this little fin on here. And this is just a reflector. This doesn't light up. And of course the senior cars had this double rib tail light. The standard cars, it was just smooth. Just try to put some of those little differences in there. But like I said, a lot of people go, oh, it's got to be a custom 8. No, this is a Super Deluxe. Believe me, there's, like I said, this is just kind of how Packard did things back then. They didn't believe really in sticking to the model year system, but they kind of just did their own thing. And if it hadn't been for corporate bean counters and a bad merger with Studebaker, it's hard to say if they'd have survived into 1960. But then again, though, too, you never know. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject for lots of videos and lots more debate done by people better at it than I am. Anyway, with that, everyone stay safe out there, and have a great day. And by the way, if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you would like, and if I missed anything, just put it down in the comments, and I will try to answer any other questions anyone has to the best of my ability. And maybe if I have to do another video, then not a problem. Anyway, have a great day. Thank you.